Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table. And today we are finishing up our 3-part series on wellness. And we're taking a little shift, a little turn today, because on our first episode, we talked about movement. On our second episode, we talked about sleep. And we've had some other things kind of thrown in here and there with, the importance of nutrition and really aligning all the parts of our physical component. And so today we are really focusing on our mental and our emotional wellness. And this is one of those things that for most of us who are busy moms running busy businesses, we get stuck in being able to make time for or actually recognize or have awareness around when we are struggling mentally and emotionally. And I know that because you are human, you absolutely have had mental and emotional struggles. I have been there. All of my clients have been there. And so you are not alone. I want to preface this by saying and validating that entrepreneurship is not an easy road. It is one of the hardest choices that you can make that also offers the greatest reward. And the same goes for parenting, right? And so I recently made a post where I said, entrepreneurship and parenting are 2 of the hardest choices and paths and journeys that we can take. And so combining them is absolutely incredibly hard. And validating the hardness is not excusing the patterns and the structures and the mentalities that we have developed and allowed and accepted around entrepreneurship. So I want to separate those 2 things because the reality is we see a lot out there about resilience and pushing through and essentially the thought of like continuance and to just keep going. And I want to say that yes, that is absolutely true. The part that we don't hear enough about, the part that's unfortunate is what is necessary to keep going. How do we build resilience? How do we keep pushing? Because at the end of the day, that's the truth, is that if we want to build something and create something successful, we have to continue. We have to keep going. And so most people only hear that part, only see that part. And what that gives us, it gives us a reminder that we're not alone, which we all need, but it also further puts us down this path of being recognized only for how much we produce, how much we do, and not giving us enough space to be human. And you've probably heard me say this before, but really we need to start making sure that we are creating life first businesses, that we are aligning our professional aspirations with our personal values. Because what we see is when these lines get crossed, right? When we build something that is incredibly financially successful and we feel empty inside, we see that somewhere along the way, we stepped out of our values or we stepped away from what we knew we actually wanted for ourselves. And so that's why today I'm bringing it front and center for us to recognize that part of wellness and healthy entrepreneurial habits is prioritizing your mental and emotional well-being. And while we know this logically, it again can be the easiest thing for us to put on the back burner. Any of these health-associated, wellness-associated habits are the first things to go. Our sleep, our nutrition, our workouts, our time for ourselves, meditation, centering, journaling, reading, spending time with people that we love, connecting to the life that is right in front of us. These are the things that we tell ourselves we don't need right now, we're just going to temporarily pause this. We're going to replace this with something else. And sometimes that just happens without us making it a conscious choice. So first and foremost, remember that everything is a choice. Everything that we do in our lives is a choice. Every circumstance and experience that we enter into, we have a choice or multiple choices. It is when we feel restricted as people that we feel our worst, that are our most frustrated. That's why we're entrepreneurs, because we wanted freedom and flexibility. But we don't want the same thing that we created for freedom and flexibility to be the thing that restricts us, the thing that makes us feel like shit. Your mental and your emotional well-being are the top priority. You are the top priority. When you run your business from a place of wholeness, fullness, fulfillment, not only do you reach higher potential, but really everything that you do feels different, because when was the last time that you achieved a goal and actually celebrated it? And if you celebrated it, was it just external, or did you really feel it? Did you actually reach a milestone and feel pride and a sense of enoughness in your body? Or were you like, that's great, I'm excited, what's next? Because I know what it's like to be you, because I have been and am you in so many ways. I know what it's like to feel like it's never enough. And I know that the feeling of it never being enough is the same thing that keeps us stuck in cycles and patterns that keep us pouring out instead of pouring in. And we can blame the physical construct of time all that we want, but the reality is we choose how we spend our time. We say yes to meetings. We say yes to projects. We say yes to events. We say yes. And I'm not telling you that you need to say no, but what I am telling you is you need to feel worthy and important enough to keep the things for yourself on your calendar as non-negotiables. A lot of times, what people don't realize is that if you put your actual work hours on paper, it may not be any absurd amount. But for moms who are running businesses with a lot of moving parts between our homes and our work, the mental load that we carry is always on. And that feeling of always being on is why even when we try to rest and recover and take space away, that doesn't go away. So whether you're working 20 hours or 80 hours, if your mind feels like you're working, or if you are constantly trying to juggle answering emails and being with your family, there is this added layer of being CEO and having to put on whatever face or perform in whatever way that you feel like you need to succeed, that you're always carrying. And what that is it's disruptive to your peace. Because how many of us have really, if we peel back the layer and the layers and the layers of what we're searching for and what we want to create and what we want to have, how many of us would recognize that what we want is to feel at peace? We want to make enough money to where we have financial freedom of choice, have freedom of choice with how we spend our time, who we spend our time with. Isn't that what we're doing it all for? And so when you build something that is creating that financially for you, but you build it in a way that traps you, and you wonder why you never actually feel good, it is because there's no honoring of the humanness. There's no recognition of the importance of the emotional and mental wellness and well-being that is necessary. Your success without peace, it doesn't matter. It's not real wealth. You don't feel wealthy when you're isolated. You don't feel wealthy when your marriage is strained. You don't feel wealthy when you're feeling guilty about your lack of presence with your children. You don't feel wealthy when you're spinning or when you're disconnected from yourself. And isn't that what we want? So wealth is not just about money. Wealth is also our internal feeling, which is why this is important for you to think about. Your mental and your emotional well-being is connected to your happiness, your joy, and your peace. Achievement without fulfillment, you feel nothing. Achievement with fulfillment, you feel everything. And so remembering that as you go forward and really becoming aware of, how do I feel when I achieve? Does it ever feel like enough? And am I happy? I once had a client say to me, I have built something that is working for everyone else but me. She had built something to provide this incredible lifestyle, and with that had sacrificed her own happiness, which truthfully, it wasn't working for her marriage or her children, which we later obviously talked about. But it's just when you really weigh things out, when you really think about what's important in the one life that we have, and you really think about what's possible. Why is it that we are so convinced that it has to be our well-being, our enjoyment of life, our happiness, our ability to be with people that we love and spend our time the way that we want to spend our time, or financial success? When your business and your life is set up to revolve around these non-negotiables, such as your sleep, your workouts, your mental well-being, that's what success is. You're succeeding internally and externally. So when I'm working with clients, there's typically 3 patterns that I see repeated that are keeping people stuck. So if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I need to find my own entrepreneurship wellness journey. I need to incorporate everything that we've talked about in this series. But really, I'm recognizing that I am achieving without fulfillment. I want you to think about and become aware of these 3 patterns. Number 1 is the overworking loop. So this is probably the most common, but essentially it's the feeling that you should always be doing something. It's the tying of your worth to your productivity is what's happening there. So you feel like you should always be doing something because there's always more to do, with this idea that if you just keep doing, eventually there will be a time that you will not have to do. But every time you get a glimpse of spaciousness or time or an open spot in your calendar, it makes you nervous and you have to fill it, because what if you fall behind? This is driven by a fear of loss that is developed after we have built something successful, and we go from, having scarcity around money to building that financial success, having financial security, and now we're afraid of losing it all. So then we overwork and push forward so that way we can keep it. The second one is the guilt complex, right? So most people will either feel guilty when they're with their families because they're not working. And then they feel guilty when they're working because they're not with their families. And they feel guilty for any sort of slowdown period, once again, because they don't want to fall behind. They don't want to let people down. They don't want to miss out on certain opportunities, not recognizing how short-sighted those decisions are. If you can lead with a higher level overview of what is most important to you, right? And reverse engineer to where really the way that I am working with clients is saying, okay, how do we create both, right? What's the goal here? You want to make 5 million per year and you want to work 25 to 30 hours a week. Okay, let's make a plan to do that. Let's see what that looks like. And making what feels impossible possible, right? So I think there's a level here of like, what we have in our awareness right now is what we've done already, what we know to be true. What we know to be true is that we have built to multiple 6 figures, multiple 7 figures by pushing, by overworking, by all of these habits that we have that are actively taking away from our well-being. We don't have data or proof otherwise. There's too much fear and too much uncertainty around. The next pattern that I see is the control struggle. So a lot of times when I'm working with a client, and one of the first things we start to do when we're evaluating time spent and energy expenditure, we look at these things and we see like there's a lot of micromanaging happening, right? Either we are not clear in our communications, we don't have the correct procedures and processes in place, or we aren't communicating correctly, or sometimes a combination of all these things. So what ends up happening is that we don't fully trust the support that we've hired to support us, which creates resentment and feeling like why can't people just do their jobs? So then we micromanage them because we're seeing some sort of change or effect in the business or team culture or operations. We're seeing some sort of effect when it's not us doing it. And so we just have this feedback loop of like, oh, okay, I'm the one that has to do it. It only gets done right when I do it. And so it's us trying to control everything instead of stepping back and figuring out what is the actual problem here. Is it the communication? Is it the expectations? Have we not giving them the training or the tools, or is it all of it? And are we afraid of people not needing us? When I move my people that have actual physical locations out of their location, that when they've been working 5 days, and when I move them out of that location and move them to a 4-day work week, there's a lot of fear around that. And they have to watch some things fall apart so that we can create solutions. There's a lot of uncertainty around that. It works when I'm there. But we have to think bigger picture. What is that creating? If it only works when you're there, are we in alignment with the freedom and flexibility you want to have? Are we in alignment with the reason why you started this business and what you wanted it to create for your family? If you don't trust anybody, we have to ask, why do we not trust them? We have to change that. So when you shift these patterns, when you stop feeding into the overworking, stop feeling like you have to do something all the time, when you stop feeling guilty for being where you are and allowing yourself to be a human and actually enjoy the human experience and maybe enjoy the kids that you carried and birthed. Like when you start doing these things, it can be uncomfortable, but breaking these patterns, getting the right structure, getting the right tools, taking the time to really pour into meditation and internal awareness and mindset work, addressing your beliefs and your habits and really taking personal responsibility. This is how you're going to start leading in a different way, both in your home and in your business. You become better when you take care of yourself. That is the emphasis of this series. If you didn't take that home already, you become literally better at everything when you take care of yourself. And if I were to ask you this question of, if you had to choose, If you had to choose between making a little bit less money or your happiness, what would you choose? I don't actually believe that we have to choose, but I think it's a fair point to pose that question because a lot of times we feel like we do have to choose, and that's why we keep choosing money over happiness. Because money can facilitate happy moments. Money can help our happiness. I don't like when people say it's not linked at all because that's bullshit. Money creates freedom of choice. It allows us to do things and go places. And I don't think that money is the problem. It's the way that we feel about finances and the way that we are running our business with financial success being the first priority versus prioritizing financial success not at the expense of our mental or physical well-being. So here's 3 little things that I want you to think about and incorporate into your life. Number 1, I want you to start your day with you. We talked about this on movement. We've talked about this on sleep. I'm a big believer in morning routines, setting the tone, setting the intention. Did you know that in order to create your dream life, you need both intention and attention? Meaning that you put your intention out into the world with clarity of exactly what you want that is in the highest good for everyone. And you place your attention on the things that are connected to that. So it is impossible for us to place our attention on wonderful things and gratitude and happiness if we feel like we're drowning constantly and if we're sleep deprived. So that's something else to think about, just in the way, like, this is universal law. So I want you to start your day with you. I don't care if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. I want you to wake up. I don't want you to touch your phone. I don't want you to touch your email. I want you to do something for yourself. I don't care if it's washing your face, something to where you can actively do it and say, I chose me first, because that sets the tone for your entire day. The next thing that I want you to do is I want you to start being aware of how you feel. I know it sounds so silly, but we are so quick to distract ourselves with work, with social media, with everything outside of us, because there's always more to do and more to pay attention to and things, craving our attention and pulling us in all directions. I want you to actually think about, how do I feel? Like, at the end of your workday, do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel super drained? You can pay attention to this, whether it's certain parts of your business, certain conversations, certain people, certain environments. Just have an awareness of your feelings, because we still have those, even as high achieving women. Just check in with yourself. And then the last thing I want you to do is I want you to start pausing before you make a decision or commit to anything. Classic rule, if anybody asks you to commit to anything that's like a meeting, event, anything that's going on your schedule, it's always let me check my calendar. It's a response that works for us because we're like, oh my God, I need to respond. I can't leave them hanging. But it also gives us a second to say, is this in alignment with my highest goals? Do I need to move something around that's actually a priority? Is this attached to a priority? Is this something that I want to do? Right? So we can ask those kinds of questions when we give ourselves that moment to reflect, inquire, and pause. And so these are 3, again, very small things. I don't ever want to put a bunch on your plate because I know that you're busy, but I'm really just asking you to raise your level of awareness around how you feel, what you're doing, what you're putting on your schedule, and anything that could be contributing to taking away from your mental and your emotional well-being. You have to come first. I hope that this wellness series has inspired you. I hope that you are sleeping well, eating well, moving well, and I hope that all of this doesn't feel like work. I hope that you see this perspective as this is the thing that is going to keep me in the game longer. These activities and time spent on myself is going to be the thing that makes me resilient. It is going to be the differentiator between me and my competition. It is going to be the way in which I can bridge that gap between achievement and fulfillment. If you guys have any questions about any of this, my inbox is always open to you. It's been really fun talking about all of these wellness things. Obviously, the former fitness coach in me loves it so much. So any of this that you guys want to talk through, again, my inbox is open. If you are in a situation right now where you are anxious, stressed, overwhelmed, spinning, if you're feeling disconnected from yourself, from your life, from your partner, from your children, and you know that what you have built is working for everybody but you, or if it's a situation where it's not working for you and your family, and you've recognized and know that you cannot sustain what you are doing right now long term, and if you are actually committed to doing things in a way that will allow you to have both financial and internal happiness and success, then you can book a call, a clarity call with me at the link in the show notes. We can talk through what you're currently experiencing. We can talk through where you want to go and what you want to feel. And then we can work through my process, which is all about building that life first business to where you can make all the money in the world, but you can actually be happy while you do it. This is an incredible, revolutionary process that I have developed over 14 years as an entrepreneur and over 8 years as a mom, to where I get to have freedom, I get to have flexibility, and we get to have incredible financial security. So I'm grateful to be here, and this is why I serve, and this is why I'm bringing it back to you. So if you are interested in working together and partnering through either my group program or one-to-one, book that clarity call today. I take a limited amount of clients, what I'm sure you knew. And so we don't want to wait on this. You are worth it. You are worth investing in. You are worth taking time for, and you are worth making these changes that will truly impact the rest of your life. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next week.